In the small town of Silverton, Colorado, under the blazing sun of September 15, 1860, Eliza Thompson stood radiant in her pearl-white wedding gown, though her eyes betrayed a restless unease beneath her forced smile. The entire community had gathered in the modest St. John's Church to witness her marriage to James Carver, the son of the wealthiest rancher in the region. The church bells chimed joyfully, but a growing void gnawed at Eliza's heart as the minutes ticked by. James was 2 hours late to his own wedding. The whispers among the congregation grew louder, the glances more awkward, and Father Michael's impatience was evident as he checked his pocket watch for the 10th time. Eliza stood steadfast at the altar, her trembling hands clutching a bouquet of white daisies she had picked from her mother's garden that morning, when she still believed this would be the happiest day of her life. When the sound of hoofbeats finally echoed outside the church, Eliza felt a mix of relief and an unsettling premonition. James strode through the oak doors with a determined step, but his expression sank her heart like a stone in deep water. It wasn't the face of a man eager to marry, but of someone burdened with an unpleasant task. "Eliza," James said, his voice cutting through the silent church without approaching the altar, "I can't go through with this. I've decided to marry Clara Beaumont." The words landed like hammer blows in the hushed sanctuary. Clara Beaumont was the only daughter of Denver's most powerful banker, a woman James had met just weeks earlier during a business trip. The congregation held its breath. Eliza felt the ground give way beneath her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the sacred space that suddenly felt desecrated. "Her dowry is 10 times yours," James continued with cold calculation, as if discussing livestock. "My family needs that financial alliance. You'll understand in time." His words sliced through not only Eliza's heart but her dignity, her future, and the life she had envisioned with him. Father Michael stepped forward, his face flushed with indignation. "James Carver, this is a sacrilege. You cannot abandon a good woman at the altar as if she were a failed business deal." But James was already turning away, his decision made long before he entered the church. "The wedding with Clara will be next week in Denver's cathedral," he announced without glancing at Eliza. "I hope you all understand that business sometimes requires difficult choices." With that, he left the church, leaving behind a silence that hurt more than any scream. Eliza stood frozen at the altar, her white gown now stained with the first tears that fell like rain on silk. The guests didn't know whether to approach or flee from the humiliation that filled every corner of the sacred space. Her mother, Margaret, covered her face with her hands, muttering through sobs about the disgrace this would bring upon the family. Her father, Henry, clenched his fists in impotent rage. "How will we face the town after this?" Margaret whispered to her husband. "Our daughter has been publicly rejected. Who will want to marry her now?" The words struck Eliza like poisoned daggers. Instead of finding comfort in the most painful moment of her life, she overheard her own mother fretting more about appearances than her shattered heart. The guests began to disperse slowly, some murmuring words of pity, others exchanging glances laden with sympathy that stung worse than the abandonment itself. Surrounded by the flowers she had chosen with care, the ribbons she had tied with hope, and the candles she had lit that morning praying for blessings on her marriage, Eliza stood alone. Without a word to anyone, she gathered her gown in her hands and fled through the church's back door. She needed air, space, a place to weep without the world watching her like a circus spectacle. She ran through Silverton's dusty streets, her wedding dress dragging dirt and stones, until she reached the forest at the town's edge. There, beside a stream that sang mournful melodies over the rocks, Eliza collapsed. She wept for the love she thought she had found, for the public humiliation, for the uncertain future stretching before her like a desert without an oasis. She cried until her tears ran dry, until the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors that cruelly contrasted with the darkness in her soul. Unbeknownst to Eliza, a pair of dark eyes watched her from the shadows of the forest, filled with a mix of compassion and something deeper. Cale, a 28-year-old Ute warrior who had lost his wife and son in border conflicts, had come to the area seeking medicinal herbs when he heard her heart-wrenching sobs pierce the forest's silence like arrows. For hours, he remained hidden, not out of cowardice but out of respect. He recognized pain when he saw it, knew what it meant to lose everything he thought would define his future. But as he watched the woman in white tremble in the growing darkness, something stirred in his heart, a feeling he thought had died forever. As the night grew colder, Cale emerged from the shadows, startling Eliza when she looked up through her tears. She saw a tall, powerful figure with sun-bronzed skin and jet-black hair cascading over his shoulders like a midnight waterfall. Her first instinct was to flee, having heard terrifying tales of the Ute people who roamed the nearby mountains. Yet something in his eyes calmed her, a deep understanding that disarmed her completely. There was no threat in his gaze, only a compassion that seemed to mirror her own pain. "I mean you no harm," Cale said in clear English, though with a distinct accent, keeping a respectful distance. "The nights here in the mountains grow cold, and your dress isn't made to keep you warm." He extended a woven blanket from his satchel toward her. "Take this. You don't have to trust me, but you should protect yourself from the chill." Eliza studied his face in the fading light. His features were strong yet noble, marked by scars that spoke of battles survived and eyes that held secrets of profound loss. Despite the warnings she'd heard about his people, she felt no fear. Perhaps her own pain was so vast it left no room for anything else, or perhaps she recognized in him the same loneliness that consumed her. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, wrapping the blanket around herself, its warmth a small comfort. "Your people and mine aren't exactly allies." Cale sat on a rock several feet away, respecting her space. "Because I know the sound of a broken heart," he said softly. "It sounds the same in Ute as it does in English." His words were like medicine to Eliza's wounded soul, the first time in hours she felt truly seen. "My wife died 3 years ago," he continued, his gaze lost in the stars beginning to appear. "My young son, too. Soldiers attacked our camp at night. Since then, this forest has been my home. Here, I can remember them without it hurting so much." His raw honesty built an invisible bridge between two worlds that had always been at odds. Eliza felt her pain intertwine with his, a stranger who had lost far more than she had. "Today was supposed to be my wedding day," she murmured, touching her stained gown. "My fiancé left me at the altar for a richer woman. The whole town saw it." The words spilled out like a confession, easing some of the shame she carried. "And my family?" she added bitterly. "They're more worried about their reputation than my broken heart." Cale nodded, his understanding deeper than words. "Sometimes, blood family hurts more than enemies. At least with enemies, you know where you stand." He stood slowly, moving with a grace born of years living in harmony with the land. "I have a cabin an hour's walk from here. It's not grand, but it's warm and safe. You can stay until you decide what to do with your life." The offer caught Eliza off guard. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." Cale's response was simple yet devastating. "Because when I lost my family, I would have given anything for someone to offer me shelter without questions. Kindness is rare in this world, and when we find it, we must share it." Eliza followed Cale through the forest, her steps uncertain but guided by a flicker of trust she couldn't fully explain. The cabin, built of logs and adobe, was simple yet sturdy, surrounded by a garden of medicinal herbs tended with expert care. Inside, it was sparse but clean, with handcrafted furniture that showcased remarkable skill. Cale insisted Eliza take the only bedroom while he slept by the fire in the main room. Each morning, she woke to the scent of fresh herbs and the quiet sounds of Cale working outside, careful not to disturb her rest. He prepared simple, nourishing breakfasts from forest plants and fruits, always asking if she needed anything specific. "How do you know so much about natural medicine?" Eliza asked one morning, watching him brew an infusion to ease her headache. His movements were precise, confident, like those of someone who had honed the art of healing over years. "My grandmother was a healer in our tribe," Cale explained, his hands working the herbs with ease. "She taught me that plants hold secrets to heal both body and spirit. After losing my family, healing others helped mend my own soul." Eliza stepped closer, intrigued. "My great-grandmother knew remedies too," she said, her fingers brushing dried leaves with reverence. "My mother called them old wives' tales, but I always hoped to learn them." Cale's eyes lit up, a spark of connection. "I'd love to teach you, but you'll have to share what you remember from your great-grandmother. We could learn together." This simple proposal marked the start of a partnership that would change them both. Afternoons became lessons in mutual learning. Eliza shared fragments of her great-grandmother's knowledge, while Cale taught her to identify, harvest, and prepare medicinal remedies. Their hands occasionally brushed while working with the plants, sparking moments of unintended intimacy neither knew how to name. "Your great-grandmother was wise," Cale said one afternoon as they crafted a salve for wounds. "Her remedies are like ours but with variations that make them stronger for certain ailments." His voice held genuine admiration, as if Eliza had brought treasures to his humble world. Weeks turned into months, and Eliza found life with Cale followed a natural rhythm that healed wounds she hadn't even known she carried. Each sunrise brought new lessons. Reading the weather and the flight of birds, finding water by following the signs of vegetation, preparing nourishing meals from the forest's bounty. More than any skill, though, was the peace growing in her heart, like a plant after a long rain. Cale was a patient teacher, never making her feel ignorant for what came naturally to him. When she struggled to identify a medicinal plant, he'd smile and say, "Knowledge comes with time, wisdom with experience. You have both, you just need to let them bloom." His words calmed the inner storms she'd carried for years. As months passed in the quiet sanctuary of Cale's cabin, Eliza's heart began to heal, nurtured by the rhythm of their shared life. One morning, while gathering willow bark for a pain-relieving remedy, she paused, her voice trembling slightly. "Cale," she said, "do you ever think about having a family again?" The question had been growing in her heart for days, but she'd lacked the courage to voice it until now. Cale stopped working, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her shiver. "Every day," he answered, his honesty disarming her. "But I thought that chapter of my life was closed forever. After losing my wife, Nita, and my son, I believed I had no right to seek that happiness again." He paused, studying her face as if it were a map to uncharted lands. "Why do you ask?" Eliza's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "Because I've been imagining what it would be like to have children with you," she confessed, the words spilling from the depths of her soul. "To build something beautiful together. I know it might sound crazy, we come from such different worlds, but—" Cale stepped closer, moving slowly as he had that first night in the forest, giving her space to pull away if she chose. When he was near enough to touch her face, he whispered, "It's not crazy. It's what my heart has been whispering since I found you crying by the stream." His fingers traced gentle lines across her cheek. "Eliza, do you know what your name means in my tongue?" She shook her head, lost in the depth of his eyes. "It means new life after the storm," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Since you came, my world has changed. I've laughed again, planned for the future, believed happiness is possible." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her forehead. "Would you be willing to build that new life with me?" Eliza's answer was a kiss, one she'd been holding back for months. Their lips met with a hunger for true connection, a thirst for a love that transcended cultural divides and past pains. When they parted, both trembled from the intensity of the moment. "Yes," Eliza whispered against his lips. "I want to build something beautiful with you. A family that celebrates both our worlds." Their hands intertwined as she spoke, sealing a sacred pact under the filtered light of the forest. The months that followed were filled with a joy neither had thought possible after their past tragedies. They married under a full moon, following Ute traditions, exchanging vows deeper than any formal ceremony. Cale carved rings from sacred wood symbolizing eternity, while Eliza wove blankets blending Mexican and Ute patterns in perfect harmony. Their work with medicinal plants grew naturally, merging ancestral knowledge from both cultures to create remedies more potent than either alone. Ute warriors traveled from distant mountains to treat battle wounds, while Mexican settlers made perilous journeys for cures city doctors couldn't provide. "You're creating something revolutionary," an elder Ute healer told them, observing their methods. "You're proving that when cultures unite with respect, they can create something greater than the sum of their parts." His words filled their hearts with pride, their love a bridge between worlds once thought irreconcilable. One night, as Eliza and Cale prepared medicines under the starlight, Eliza felt a dizzy spell and sat down abruptly. Cale rushed to her side, his healer's hands gently examining her with a husband's concern. When his fingers rested on her abdomen and sensed a subtle change, his eyes filled with joyful tears. "Are you sure?" Eliza murmured, touching her belly with reverence. "Completely," Cale replied, his voice breaking with emotion. "We're going to have a child, my love. We'll build the family we've dreamed of." They embraced under constellations that seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself celebrated the new life growing within her. Eliza's pregnancy unfolded with the natural beauty of someone who had found her place in the world. Her belly grew as a tangible promise of the future they were building, each day bringing new joy to their mountain sanctuary. Cale cared for her with unwavering devotion, carving a cedarwood cradle by hand, gathering the purest herbs to ease her delivery, and whispering stories in Ute and English to their unborn child about the rich heritage they would inherit. But this peace was shattered one October morning when riders appeared on the horizon of their hidden valley. Eliza recognized them instantly, her heart racing as clouds of dust rose in the crisp mountain air. James Carver led the group, his arrogant posture unmistakable even from a distance. Beside him rode several armed men, their intentions clear, and to Eliza's horror, her father, Henry, was among them, his grim expression foreboding. Cale appeared at her side, his warrior instincts sensing the approaching danger. His dark eyes scanned the intruders, assessing their numbers, weapons, and positions, calculating defense strategies should the situation turn violent. "Do you know them?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with tension. "It's James," Eliza whispered, her hand instinctively shielding her swollen belly. "My former fiancé. And my father is with him." The realization hit her like a blow. She knew her family had come to reclaim her, and James's return was driven by motives far from love. James dismounted with theatrical arrogance, perfected over years of believing himself superior. His marriage to Clara Beaumont had been a spectacular failure, ruining his finances and social standing. Clara had proven not only barren but mentally unstable, and her family was pursuing an annulment that threatened to strip James of his investments. Desperate to salvage his wealth and status, he had returned for Eliza with purely calculated intentions. "Eliza Thompson," James shouted from the yard, his voice dripping with the same contempt he'd shown when he abandoned her at the altar. "I've come to take you back where you belong. This game of playing Indian has gone on long enough." His words sliced through the morning air, shattering the peace Eliza and Cale had built. Fury surged in Eliza's chest at his audacity to call her life, her love, her family, a game. Cale placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Stay here," he murmured, his voice carrying a warrior's authority. "I'll handle this." But Eliza shook her head, her resolve forged in the mountains. "No," she said firmly, surprising herself. "This is my fight. They're my past, my family. I need to face them." She stepped toward the door with a dignity born of her new life, ready to confront the shadows of her old one. Eliza stepped out of the cabin with the grace of someone who had found her true place in the world. One hand rested protectively on her swollen belly, the other firmly clasped Cale's, a clear display of their unity and love. Her posture radiated a confidence she had never possessed as the obedient daughter of the Thompson family. "I don't belong anywhere but here," she declared, her voice echoing through the valley. "This is my home, my husband, and where our child will be born." Her words rang like a declaration of independence, stunning the men who had expected to find a broken woman desperate to return to civilization. Henry dismounted, his movements betraying both age and suppressed anger. His face flushed with a mix of shame and fury, but when he saw his daughter's pregnant state, his expression shifted to horror masked as moral outrage. The woman before him was not the defeated daughter, he remembered, but someone transformed by love and purpose. "Look at what you've become," he roared, gesturing wildly. "Pregnant by a savage, living like an animal in these godforsaken mountains. You've disgraced our family name, made us a laughingstock." "I've found true honor," Eliza countered, standing her ground. "I've found a love that doesn't depend on money, status, or anyone's approval. I've found a man who values me for who I am, not for my name or dowry." Her words struck James like arrows, who had come expecting a humiliated woman eager to return to her former life. Instead, he faced someone who had flourished beyond society's constraints. James exchanged a loaded glance with his armed men. He had come prepared to use force if words failed, desperate to marry Eliza to access her family's properties and salvage his failed investments. "My marriage to Clara is being annulled," he announced, as if this should fill Eliza with gratitude. "I'm willing to honor our original engagement, despite your condition. If you come with me now, we can leave this madness behind." The sheer audacity of his offer left everyone speechless. that James believed he could return after publicly humiliating her and expect her to accept his proposal as a favor ignited a fury in Eliza fiercer than any she'd ever felt. Cale stepped forward, his presence commanding. "My wife's only condition is that she's happy, safe, and loved," he said calmly, his tone more threatening than any shout. "And she'll stay here, where she chose to build her life." James scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your wife? Where's the priest who married you? Where are the legal papers recognized by American authorities? Eliza Thompson is a citizen of good standing and can be rightfully claimed by her family and original fiancé." He signaled his men, who began to spread out around the cabin, their coordinated movements hinting at their intent to take Eliza by force. But before violence could erupt, the sound of drums echoed from the surrounding hills, growing from a faint murmur to a powerful rhythm that shook the earth. James and his men glanced nervously toward the mountains as Ute warriors descended in perfect formation, their faces painted for war but adorned with white feathers signaling peace if their terms were respected. Leading them was Tarak, Cale's older brother and a respected chief of several confederated tribes. His commanding presence shifted the balance of power in the valley. "My brother sent word days ago," Tarak declared in clear English, dismounting with feline grace. "We knew you'd come for the woman who's brought healing to our people." Behind the warriors appeared Mexican settlers, families Eliza recognized as those she'd treated over the months. An elder, Juan Morales, whose granddaughter Eliza had saved from a deadly fever, stepped forward with a sealed document. "Mr. Carver," he said firmly, "I carry the signatures of 43 families testifying to Eliza's healing work, and the blessing of Father Gabriel from Durango, who declares her marriage to Cale valid in God's eyes." Father Gabriel, an elderly priest revered among the region's poor, approached on his familiar mule. "I'm here because these people asked me to testify to Eliza's character," he said with unquestionable moral authority. "In my 50 years of priesthood, I've never seen purer devotion to the needy." He took Eliza's hands with paternal tenderness. "You've found your true calling, my child. Your work is sacred, and to tear you from it would be a sin against God's will." Henry, watching the scene unfold, felt something break inside him. Seeing his daughter surrounded by such respect and love forced him to confront what he'd nearly destroyed. "Eliza," he murmured, dismounting with faltering steps, "forgive me. I was so blinded by pride and social expectations that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. I thought I'd lost a daughter, but now I see you found yourself, and what you found is more beautiful than anything I could have imagined." Eliza's heart swelled. She'd longed for her father's approval for years, but now realized she no longer needed it to be whole, though it was no less precious. "I forgive you, Papa," she whispered, embracing him as they both wept. James, seeing his plan crumble, made a final desperate plea. "This is absurd. She's a citizen with legal obligations." But Tarak stepped forward, producing a treaty with official seals. "Our tribes have peace agreements with American authorities, recognizing our right to protect those who live among us and contribute to our communities. Eliza is a respected healer and my brother's wife by our laws. Taking her by force would be an act of war." Outnumbered and outmatched, James's men hesitated, unwilling to start a fight they couldn't win. Eliza stepped into the center, her pregnant form vulnerable yet radiating strength. "James," she said, her voice blending passion with resolve, "I once thought I needed your love to be whole. I thought your rejection was the greatest tragedy I could face. But now I see it was the greatest gift. It freed me to find true love, real purpose, a life worth living. Thank you for not being the man I needed, because it led me to the man I deserved." James stood speechless, his plan to play the savior shattered by a woman who had thrived without him. Cale approached him with quiet dignity. "James Carver," he said, "thank you for not valuing the treasure you had. Your loss became my greatest gain." He offered his hand in peace. "If you're ever sick or wounded, you're welcome at our clinic. Eliza has taught us that healing knows no boundaries between friend or foe." 3 years later, the valley had become a thriving community, a beacon of harmony where cultures blended seamlessly. Eliza and Cale's clinic grew into a renowned healing center, drawing patients from hundreds of miles away. Eliza, now mother to 2 children bearing the beauty of both cultures, sat on their porch at sunset, nursing her newborn daughter. Their 2-year-old son played in the medicinal garden, speaking Ute and English with ease, a living symbol of their united worlds. Cale joined her, carrying gifts from grateful patients, fresh fruits, woven blankets, wooden toys for the children. "Do you ever regret it?" Eliza asked, though she knew his answer. "Only that I didn't find you sooner," Cale replied, kissing her forehead. "We've built something beautiful, my love, something that will last generations." In the distance, the mountains stood against a golden sky, the wind carrying sounds of children playing and communities thriving where love had triumphed over prejudice. Eliza smiled, knowing her story had begun with abandonment but ended in a fulfillment greater than she'd ever dreamed possible.